Being here. Welcome to Putting It All on the Table, Animal Ag and the Future of Food. I think there's another slide with the names of these illustrious guests. Oh, I have the clicker. There we go. Perfect. Except one thing that Alexandra has morphed into Roberto over there. I don't know how they did that, but thank you all for being here. There's no secret today that people want to know about the impacts of their food. They want to understand how it touches them, how it touches the world, and of course there have been issues raised around animal agriculture and its impacts. My company, How Good, tracks the impacts of all food products all around the world, and indeed I can confirm there are concerns, but this doesn't mean that we should throw out animal agriculture altogether. That just doesn't make sense. It has an important and key role to play in nutrition, in nutrient cycling, and in a healthy, sustainable food system. I know this for myself from my small farm in upstate New York, where we raise apples, but also grass-fed sheep and lamb and shiitake mushrooms, all working together in an integrated agricultural agroforestry system. Sustainability has multiple components, and you can't ever work in isolation. You can't just work on the environmental side without considering the farmer, and the social side without considering the economic viability of the whole thing. So our panel here today has a really diverse set of perspectives from across the world of animal agriculture, and I'm very happy to be here to dive in on the essential contributions that animal agriculture can make to a sustainable, maybe even regenerative food system. So again, I'm Ethan Solovyev. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at How Good, which is the world's largest food sustainability database. I work with companies across the food system, from retailers to brands to ingredient suppliers to farmers, to help them understand their impacts and optimize and reduce impact over time. I'm very proud to be partnering with the Meat Institute and the Protein Pact here and in many places around COP and around the world. So we're going to do a quick lightning round. I'd love to just hear your name and the organization you're with, and then I'll pick up some questions. Eric, start us off. We'll go down the line.
All right. I'm Eric Mittenthal, Chief Strategy Officer at the Meat Institute, and I lead the Protein Pact work as well.
I'm Maddie Hokinson. I am a pig farmer in Minnesota, in the northern part of the U.S., and I do all the finances and accounting for our business.
Hello, I'm Michael Lee. I'm Deputy Vice Chancellor of Harper Adams University in the UK, and also a Professor of Sustainable Agriculture.
Martha Baker, and I work for Alltech. I am Global Director for Carbon Markets.
Roberto Betancourt. I am the President of the Brazilian feed industry, Feed Latina, Latin America feed industry, and Vice Chair of the International Feed Industry Federation.
Thank you very much. So we have a real diversity from the academic to the tech side to the feed side to actual producer, which is amazing, to someone weaving it all together. So great to have these perspectives. Maddie, farmers first. So we're going to start with you. You're one of the few people up here who's actually producing the food that so many folks here are talking about. Can you give us a bit of a picture of your farm, your ranch, and tell us more about environmental stewardship there? What does it look like? How are you moving that forward?
Yeah, well, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I have a few slides if you want to move forward. This is my family. My husband, Eric, and our two boys, Brent and Scott, and that's my sister there on the left. I think that was one Thanksgiving Eve when we were farrowing pigs. But anyway, I am a 7th generation pig farmer in Goodhue, Minnesota, in the southern part of our state, and I'm just about 6 miles from the bluffs and valleys of the Mississippi River. So we raise pigs and cattle on our farm. Like I said, I'm the 7th generation, so we farm, if you go to the next slide, along with my parents and my brother on the right side and his family, Holly, and their 3 kids. And then our grandparents as well are still part of the operation, and we have about 30 employees. So if that gives you kind of I'd say we're in that small to mid-size farmer for what pig farming is in the United States. Move on to the next slide. You can see we have 2 sow farms. One of them is a regular commercial farm where those pigs are raised out and they become the meat that go to your table. And on the other farm, we raise what would be called genetics. So those The girls, the gilts, then will move on and become mamas at the sow farms across the Midwest, and that would be our customer base. So it's a little bit of a different style and a little bit more of a niche market that we serve, but biosecurity is extremely important. Keeping our pigs healthy and raising our pigs in the bluffs and valleys of the Mississippi allows us to do that really well. It acts as a good natural barrier. So if you're out and you think about the grain belt in Iowa, Illinois, getting into western Minnesota is pretty flat, and it's really great for having corn and beans close by, but it also can lead to wind blowing and causing more diseases to get in. So where we're at, it has kind of a natural health barrier and keeps our pigs healthier and allows us then to be able to send those pigs on, and they become the moms at the new farms. If you go to the next slide, we also raise cattle. We have about 350 cow-calf pairs, and they are all eating grass, and some get finished out by us and some get finished out by some of our neighboring farms, but in the bluffs and the valleys of the Mississippi as well. So there's a lot of ground of ours that's highly erodible, and we have to be really careful how we take care of it. So being able to use it as pasture ground as opposed to using it for conventional farming has been a really great opportunity and a great practice for us, and something that we integrate well, the combination. We do have some cropping that we do, all to feed our livestock, and then we have to buy in a lot of our products as well. But manure management is something that's extremely important on our farm. You see up in the upper right that we put manure right into the ground exactly where we need it to be, when we need it to be there, and making sure that we test the soil, we test the manure, to ensure that we're only giving the ground exactly what it needs, when it needs it, and we do it in the environmental time, either in the fall and or the spring, when it's going to be utilized well and not going to be eroding or moving away, because that's a nutrient valuable source that we want to be keeping on our ground. History, like I said, we're 7 generations strong and really proud of it. And I think that's something to really think about in the conversation on sustainability. It's not just about environment. Environment is a huge component, but environment is important. Economic sustainability, social sustainability, all those have to work together well in order to advance to the next generation. And we've been able to do that from generations 1 to generation 7. And on the far left side, Louis there, he's the oldest of the 8th generation, and we're really proud of that fact. But that's not something that just happens. We have to work together each and every day, and we have to ensure that all those things are working together well in order for, in another 20 or 30 years, for them to come back to the farm too. And with that, hopefully that gives a little overview of who our farm is.
Thanks, Maddie. Michael, I'm going to turn to you. We know that one of the top concerns here at COP is greenhouse gas emissions. And according to the UN FAO, 12% of global greenhouse gas emissions are coming from animal agriculture. What can you tell us about the sort of current state of the science, the latest evidence on understanding and reducing livestock's environmental impact globally? And then also, how do you collaborate? How are you working with others to sort of strengthen that evidence and fill the gaps that we still have?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we are, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Ethan. 12% is a number. It shows that agriculture, particularly livestock agriculture, contributes to global warming. But we have to be clear as well in terms of the fact that, and also the message going out to farmers and the scientific community, is that, well, is agriculture to blame for global warming? Our livestock, and what we hear often is it's cows that are driving global warming. But let's be clear, in a world without fossil fuels, we would not give a damn about burping cows. But we don't live in a world without fossil fuels, and it's going to be a long time before we do live in a world with fossil fuels. So we do care about burping cows, and agriculture has a critical role to play in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. But we've got to be careful of the narrative, and we've got to support farmers whose primary purpose is to produce food. So we've got to get the balance right. But I think particularly when we think about ruminant livestock, we think about methane. And methane actually gives us a great opportunity. It's a huge challenge. It contributes significantly to global warming, but we also have the opportunity to give us more time in terms of reducing carbon dioxide emissions so we can focus on reductions of methane, both thermogenic and biogenic sources on farm. And that's where the science really plays, and that's where our farmers are doing a fantastic job about looking at how we can improve our systems. When I talk to farmers and the science that we do, I like to think it in 4 simple steps. The first 2 steps are about reducing emissions, first and foremost. Step 1, you've got to focus on the animal. And the first fundamental point is health. As a farmer yourself, if you haven't got a healthy stock, you can't improve. You can't improve genetics, you can't improve nutrition, so you've got to focus on the animal. And of course, welfare is an integral part of that. Without welfare, we lose, and rightfully lose, our social license to operate. So welfare and health, the first fundamental points. And then, of course, still part of step 1, focusing on the animal, is about genetics and improvements. And all you've got to look at is the reduction in emissions within our agricultural systems, particularly livestock, over the last few decades. Really focusing on nutrition and genetics to reduce those emissions. Step 3 then is the diet. Making sure it's the best possible diet to reduce emissions, be they nitrous oxide or methane, and also looking at the embedded carbon within the foods. So looking at soya, looking at how those foods are produced, and also homegrown proteins and high quality forages as much as possible. The next 2 steps on farm, where step 1 and step 2 focus on reducing emissions, step 3 and step 4 about capturing carbon on farm. And we don't hear enough about this. The emissions we often hear are the gross emissions. We talk about net zero and then report the gross emissions of that farm. So step 3 is all about looking at the land's carbon capture, the biomass, the soil, and truly understanding carbon stocks on farms, not just flux. So really getting a clear view about the land's carbon holding potential and giving that to the farmer as part of their resource to reduce their emissions as part of that net zero balance. And then step 4 is about energy and green energy. I have seen some amazing schemes on farm where farmers have been able to take their farm and surrounding industries off grid, either through wind, solar, tidal, hydroelectric, or anaerobic digestion and regenerative practices. And also then critically, nutrient strip. We have a fantastic resource in our manures, rich in phosphorus, rich in nitrogen, often very badly applied on our land holdings, which then cause a pollution risk. We need to turn that around, and we need to turn that into a valuable resource of phosphorus and nutrient mining. Stop mining Western Sahara, start mining the back end of pigs. Take the phosphorus out of those resources and move it to where it's needed. Stop splash paint application on soils which are over phosphorus embedded. Let's use those technologies. So I think those 4 steps on each farm, and there'll be different solutions on each farm, will help us move in that direction.
Awesome.
Treating farmers and food production is an opportunity to buy us more time in terms of climate, to reduce carbon, and stopping the blame game.
Yeah. I really love the point that each farm is going to be unique. The practices in each place, in each region. Maddie was talking about some specific to her place. Each one is going to be individual. And I also think that point on carbon sinks and total carbon stock is an exciting one. We'll soon have the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Land Sector Removals Guidance out, finally, which will give us a key and unified way around the world to be tracking that carbon capturing. And then I think there's huge number of opportunities. Many places in the world, it's great to plant trees. It's great to have trees integrated with agriculture as agroforestry, catches a lot of carbon. But there are also many places where ruminant animals on grasslands are the most appropriate land use. And there's huge opportunity for carbon capture in those places. So thank you. That's great. Martha, we're going to go to you at Alltech. As we were just hearing before, animal health, animal nutrition is key, and Alltech does a lot of work in those realms. But to take it a little turn different than the technical here, I actually want to go more to the narrative side of things, which is about the documentary that Alltech helped create, which is called The World Without Cows. Look at that. Perfect. Nice prop. Love to hear a little bit about the film and also about the discussions, maybe the debates that have emerged out of it. And what are you learning? What are the new opportunities and challenges that are emerging from that documentary?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So Alltech is a company that was Irish founded. It really, and if you think about folks from Ireland, and there's several in this room, they're great storytellers, and Alltech is a fabulous storyteller. But the unique thing is we're telling a story that's based on science and it's based on fact, and we're putting it into a digestible form so that not just us within the industry, but hopefully those outside of the industry can better understand the impact, the positive impact, and the possibilities that agriculture provides. So, whenever we think about it, some of the things that if we back up, where did this even begin? And we have Oatly to thank for the creation of the documentary World Without Cows. Because in a Super Bowl commercial, which is, the largest watched event in the U.S., there was a commercial where the whole idea was asking the question of how great it would be in a world without cows. And our CEO and president, Dr. Mark Lyons, thought, wait a minute. We need to actually examine that and get to the root of what would it be like. Let's go out and ask that question. And he sent 2 filmmakers, journalists out, and the only guidance he gave them was to examine what the world would be like if there were no cows. So it really looked at both sides of the narrative, and some of the things that we have learned is that it's the lack of understanding that is key. So outside of our industry, we really need to get that narrative out. We need to continue telling our story. And the other thing is that the narrative is important for our industry. And when I say our industry, I'm not talking about animal agriculture. I'm talking about all of agriculture. We should not be pitting one division or one sector against another, because it is the interconnectedness that makes agriculture what it is and the value that we bring. We also tend to really narrowly define things like regenerative ag. And that is not a narrow conversation. It is not simply animals on pasture. It has so much more. It's a much more robust topic than just that. So as we continue this, one of the things that we're doing is we're taking this documentary, and it is a full-length 90-minute documentary. We have had numerous showings all over the world. There are actually 6 showings here at COP. So if you're going to be around tomorrow and next week, or if your colleagues are, there will be a QR code that I believe will pop up at the end. And I'll ask that if you scan that QR code, it will take you to a link where you can register. There's a fantastic cinema where you can get some great air conditioning, number one, some tasty popcorn and some drink, and really examine what the world would be like without cows. And we've even expanded this, and currently we've got an additional 20-minute section on just Brazil, because Brazil has so much potential. You guys are doing so much at the moment, and even with what you're doing, the opportunity for improvement and the way that it will impact our planet is so significant. And then we're going to build it out. There was another section done on Ireland, and that will be following. And I think the key is that we look at all of the systems and just really continue the storytelling based on science and based on data.
Thank you. And you made a good transition there to Brazil. Roberto, we're going to go to you. I heard a statistic earlier today. It may not be true. Somebody could check me on it. But I was talking about back at the Rio Earth Summit at that time in 1992, Brazil was actually a net importer of food, and that has to the tune of $12 billion or so, and that has now shifted. So there's now 150 billion or more in exports leaving Brazil of agriculture. So the transformation of Brazil to this very significant global player in agriculture is amazing, is impressive. I'm interested if you could tell us a bit from the feed perspective, feed for animals. How have things changed over that time? What has been the evolution of the feed industry in the last 20, 30 years?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to come here. Very nice to talk to you. We in the animal nutrition are doing a great job for many, many years. Sustainability for us began 25 years ago, and we got together as animal nutrition in world organizations. The first thing, we understand that nutrition is key for environmental sustainability of the animals. It's the main emission source for animal protein. So we are doing a lot of research. We believe in science. We have in animal nutrition the goal to produce more with less. And we need to do it every year. We need to improve it every year. Feed conversion, biocircularity. We use ingredients that are not appropriate for human nutrition. So if we don't use all these ingredients, we will have a lot of leftovers that we take care of that. So the animal nutrition nowadays is doing research and specific here in the tropics. We are doing even more. We are doing integration of forest, agriculture, and animal production. So we use manure of the animals for the forest growing, for crops. So we have this integrated view of agriculture, forestry, and animal production. But globally, we are improving in science. We believe in GMOs. We believe in improving the digestibility, using feed enzymes, using feed additives. And now we are utilizing technology to lower ruminant digestion emissions as well. So we believe that science, technology are key for animal production, and the animal nutrition sector is investing heavily in providing the means for the producers to have a lower emission animal protein.
Excellent. Thank you. Eric, you get to kind of look over the big picture here. She's doing the slides. Great. You're leading the Meat Institute's work, continuous improvement initiatives, and kind of industry-wide collaboration. You have been pulling together data. You were telling me recently about some of the data that you're bringing together from within the membership that can help strengthen some of the collaboration that we've heard about from the feed to the producers, from the producers downstream. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that within the supply chain? Give us some concrete examples of that collaboration and how the data is driving it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my job is to pull all of this together, all this work together under one umbrella. We call it the Protein Pact for the People, Animals, and Climate of Tomorrow. And we know that currently demand for animal protein around the world continues to rise. And will likely continue to rise. And in order to meet that demand, we have to be able to produce our products as sustainably as possible with as little impact as possible. And so we want to be, as an organization that sits in the middle of the supply chain, representing the majority of the red meat in the U.S. and North America, as well as poultry, that we can play an important role in connecting efforts that are occurring on the farm, in the feed sector, then with our members in the processing sector, and ultimately for restaurants and retailers as well. In order to solve big challenges, we truly have to be able to work together across many different actors to be able to solve those. And so we know that this is not just a one segment, one company solution. It really requires everybody working together in a very coordinated fashion, and that's really what we're trying to build as part of our work. We know that processors play a really important role in connecting and being able to have their own story to tell around the things that they're doing related to not only the climate and greenhouse gas emissions, but also animal welfare, food safety, labor and human rights, food security, and the environmental impact. And so we've been working to capture our impacts across all of those different focus areas and getting a sense of where our industry is performing really well, where there's opportunity to continue to improve, and building resources for the industry to advance based on that. Specifically on the climate, we have been working with our members on education about how to measure their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. We know that at the start of our work several years ago, many of our members did not know how to measure emissions, and so we've created tools, and we were the second trade association to participate in a program called Supplier Locked, which is aims to provide education to companies all across the supply chain to be able to measure emissions. We've had more than 40 companies go through that program now over just about a year and a half. And so we know that the demand amongst our membership is there to be able to improve and demonstrate that. And we continue to be able to provide those resources to do that, not just in environment, but across all those different focus areas.
Okay, so I'm going to do a few more questions to the panel, but then we're also going to pick up questions from the audience in a little bit. But Maddie, I want to go back to you. It sounds like there's some great stuff happening to improve the sustainability of animal agriculture. Are there particular tools or technologies that have been useful to you or others? And then are those operating at scale, or what kind of support would it take to get some of those tools and tech operating at scale?
When you think about agriculture, livestock, or crop farming, there's a lot of areas of technology that we have utilized, and some areas that are beginning to be utilized more. One area that our farm is beginning to focus on even more heavily would be in the area of precision feeding, specifically in our gilts. So those girls that are going to turn into the sows one day, it is vitally important that from the time they're weaned off of their moms all the way until they get to a point where they're being bred and they're going to be those sows, it's really important that they're getting the exact nutrients that they need at each phase of development to make sure that their reproductive system is going to operate well, to make sure that they're having good structural integrity, to make sure that they are prepared then to be able to go and be good mothers and have good, healthy litters of pigs that ultimately become that food source for us here on Earth. But with that, there's a lot of companies that have worked to develop various softwares and technology that allows us to do that. But I would say at this point, probably cost is the biggest hindrance of moving to that, as well as looking at who is our labor force that's doing a lot of the work in our sow farms and in our gilt development units, and being able to understand what's their capacity to be able to handle that technology well and to be able to utilize it well. So we work with our nutritionists, and then we work with our either ourselves if we're right on the farm, or we work with our employees, and it's important that they can work together really well to ensure all the nutrients that those gilts need have at each phase of development.
Great. Michael, your take on tools and tech that might be useful, that you've seen being useful, and then also a kind of a broader research question, which is, what should our research priorities be right now in order to move animal agriculture towards sustainability?
Yeah, thank you, Ethan. It's an exciting and a challenging time. We've got to get this right. And I'll address the question in two key areas. I think, first of all, we have to do work on metrics, because we've got to get the metrics right, because we've got to empower farmers in terms of the correct information flowing through. And I've just finished a piece of work with the FAO on circularity. You mentioned about circularity. And really, if we're going to define sustainability in food systems, talking about it linearly is not going to deliver the final outcome. And if you think about all our metrics, they're linear. Inputs, food, waste. life cycle assessment. It's a linear assessment of a system that needs to be circular in terms of really to drive sustainability. So that's circular bioeconomy and the critical role that livestock will play within that circularity. And of course, the critical interaction you mentioned about, Ethan, the interaction either on farm, inter-interaction between livestock and cropping and arable and more horticulture. We certainly need more fresh fruit and vegetables, there is no doubt. Or is it going to be interconnection, either having more SI-orientated livestock farms and utilizing those nutrients into more intensive arable systems? You're going to need both SI and agroecology. So that is critical. The other key area we need critically more research on is actually baselining and fully understanding what is happening in different soil types and in different farms, and really getting a true essence of carbon stocks and emission factors on farms. And the great thing is about farms that we don't have single blueprints, particularly when we're thinking about ruminant livestock farms, and emission factors are going to be very different. Nitrous oxide emissions from a sheep pissing in the hilllands of Snowdonia is going to be very different to a sheep pissing in the fens. And at the moment, we don't counter that. Right. We need to better understand our systems, but also when farmers apply an intervention, that they know they are going to be rewarded for it. At the moment, there is no clear way that farmers can get that value in terms of doing it, either in terms of how we connect data at a national level, in terms of our national inventories, or how we do it in terms of carbon calculators.
Yeah.
So metrics, data, let's get that circular system, and that will truly show the role that livestock have in future sustainable food systems. Alongside fantastic plant protein, more fresh fruit and vegetables, livestock have a critical role to play.
Yeah, and this similar topic you're bringing up came up in a session with WWF earlier, looking at the Codex Planetarius and how we need that unified single set of data, unified metrics, and then being able to see and track that variability. You gave an example from the highlands to the fens. That exists over and over again. There's huge variability, and there is significant movement in the farm calculators, in the companies that are out there tracking it, even in open source data systems like coming out of Oxford on, what is that baseline footprint of multiple carbon but also water around the world. I think that will continue to help with this part of it.
I think so. I think we are still relying too much on tier 1 and even tier 2 data. You dream of getting to tier 2 when you're still using tier 1 data. But look at different source types around the world. I use an example in the UK. But then you look at streams, in terms of Africa, in terms of those different production systems, different genetics. We've got to have that much better data, and we've got to move to tier 2. We're using way too much global average data at the moment, which is meaningless.
Yeah.
It is really meaningless.
Yeah, with averages, there's no way to drive impact and reduction because you can't see where to target. We've already taken that jump. We have no tier 1 data. We're all tier 2, but we want tier N. We want that farm level data coming up, and we want also farmers to be rightly compensated for having and licensing their data downstream. Martha, I want to just give you a chance on the tech side of things. I had asked this question. What are some of the tools and tech that's out there right now that you're seeing to reduce environmental impact? And then we'll pick up some questions.
Great. So I can say on the ruminant side, even Alltech has a product that not only reduces enteric methane, but drives productivity. And when we're looking at how we're going to really make a difference, we cannot look at it in a siloed manner. So if we go back to what Maddie referred to earlier, whenever we're thinking about sustainability, ES and G, there are 3 pillars. We cannot look at them independently. So the environment, we know what we're talking about. We're trying to heal the planet. We're trying to reduce our emissions. But that S is critically important. And this is something that, fundamentally, Alltech is still a science-based company. And while we're going to continue, developing and delivering the narrative of our industry, our real focus is on developing solutions that first drive profitability at the farm. They pay for themselves because then that encourages the adoption. If we don't have products that producers, to my right and to my left want to use because they benefit their farms, then we cannot make progress. So that's what we're going to keep on doing.
I love that criteria of whatever the tool or tech is, it has to make economic sense and drive value for the producers themselves. Maddie, a comment?
Yeah, if I could just go off that a little bit more, I think the one key to that is that it doesn't necessarily have to make short-term economic sense. That input to that animal means more output to that same animal. It can be a long game approach as long as there is science to back it. At least that's our farm's perspective, and I think is the perspective of a lot of other farmers, whether it's cattle, crops, pigs, sheep, goats, whatever it might be. It can be a long approach. We use science to back what we're doing, but it does have to have that economic impact, because otherwise we can't sustain and continue farming for generations, like I talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, and we've heard this over and over again, not just from animal agriculture, but basically all farmers. There's not a lot. Sometimes here in these halls you hear about the need to convince farmers to do something. I don't think there's any convincing that needs doing. There just needs to be an economic benefit. Most farmers are business people and will follow the economic benefit. And so if you can show that, if you can find technologies, if you can shift systems that encourage environmental performance increases that are financially viable, we will go that way. Farmers of the world will go that way very quickly. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to invite, this rarely happens, but I'm going to invite you in the audience, because we have a great audience here. I'm going to invite you to turn to a neighbor who's somebody sitting next to you, ideally somebody you don't know, and talk with them just for a minute about what you heard from the panel, what questions, what challenges, what ideas you have coming up. And then in just 2 minutes, we'll pull it back in and get some questions from you to the panelists. So turn to a neighbor, have a chat, go for it. You can talk too. Yeah, you're gonna liberate. You can ask. Huh? I think so. I don't know. I don't know all the Sure, just kind of 6 to 7:30. I'm gonna scoot out of here. I'm actually gonna go all the way to the green zone, out and walk across the street. I'll get kids up there. That's what we're testing it tonight because. It was on a bike. Yeah. Exactly. So my hypothesis is, rather than waiting in traffic here, I'm going to just get out to the green zone and let you know. Let's see. Yeah, we'll let you know. Yeah, because if it does, then we can help people do that in Europe and others, and even have a van there. You take 15 people, you just got to corral them. Yeah, we got that sorted. Yeah, last night we pre-arranged with taxis, with the taxi service, so that we had a series of taxis showing up. Yeah, we got it sorted this time. That's what I heard. Yep. I mean, we love Cox, we love doing it, and I don't know if we'll do the scale of Regen House at Cox again. What it takes to get a new place, a new team, a new country, a new language every time. Just a little we might do a few dinners, but maybe just at a restaurant and not in trouble doing it. I do really like, though, for us, staying there and having it, I think that's quite nice. We'll see. We'll see. Let me get through these 2 weeks and we'll plan for next year. Okay, about 30 seconds. 30 seconds to wrap up your thought and get a question ready. Alrighty, bring your attention back up here. Would love to hear questions from the audience. You kind of have to holler it, but I think, yeah, come on up.
Donald, you got a question?
Tara's got one. We got one here to start.
Okay, so this year COP has been called the COP of implementation, of execution, I guess, because, you know, many people have said this is my X COP, this is my Y COP, but so this is truly the COP of execution. So tell us, I guess, what you view in a year's time, in 3 years' time, how do you know it's been a successful COP?
Good question. I want to do that
Okay.
one. That's a good one.
I'll jump in on that, which this is not planned. I had no idea
Good.
that my colleague was going to ask this question. No idea. So I think that there's a couple of things that are really key. Data, and I heard about this. Eric mentioned it in an earlier session yesterday, and Maddie's mentioned it. But I think that if we look 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and we start thinking about some of the key things, is we're going to see a lot more data collection and understanding of farm baselines in non-regulatory based countries. So Europe has that. They're mandated to do that, but most other countries are not. And you know, we cannot implement effective change if we don't know where we are. We have already run the first mile. We just didn't know where the starting point was. So I think part of this is there's going to be reportable data that as these technologies are being adopted, we can actually report on it. So the goal isn't about reporting, it is about affecting change, but we do not know how much change we affect without that data.
Global baseline for all animal agriculture data to a subnational level in 1 year. That's success.
Whoa, I didn't say 1 year. Slow down.
So I can build on that as well. For COP to be successful, first off, we need to be thinking about what is warming the planet, not just what's being emitted, what is actually warming the planet. And that's one of the things that we're trying to work on is how can we accurately capture warming, because that's what we need to be addressing. And so we need to make sure that when we come out of these COPs, we are truly addressing what is warming. The other piece that I will say, and I would say this for all the COPs that I've been participating in, is it's about, going back to what I said at the beginning, it's about collaboration. It's about solving challenges together. Big problems don't get solved with small solutions. They need big solutions. They need big collaboration, and that's what we want to collaborate, not just amongst ourselves, but amongst others outside of our sector as well.
Okay. Any other answers or another question from the audience?
No, just to add, the demand is growing as far as our products, animal protein, in places where there is lack of technology and science and information. So as far as Brazil, we would like to help the tropical world to improve sustainability and economics, productivity as well. But in order to do that, it's important to have the financing to allow Africa, for instance, to improve sustainability and productivity. So one of the ideas of COP is not just to look at the rich countries, it's how we can make a difference in poor places like Nigeria or where they need our technology, our information, and there is a huge demand for food.
Yeah, so linking that technology innovation with the financing to make it possible would be, great outcome. You want to add something, Michael? And then we got one more question coming.
Yeah, just very quickly, because I agree with my panelists. I think they're all really, really great points. I think we need to work on our national inventories, and that will get the data flow through, so we can better understand interventions at a national level. I think that's absolutely critical. We also need to reflect on green finance for resilience, because we are living in a climate changed era, Of course, we want to reduce those emissions, but we need to produce food to feed a population. The type of agriculture we're going to need is going to be different. We've got to support our brothers and sisters in different parts of the world that really need that support. Africa and Asia to leapfrog those technologies so we can actually get that improvements straight away. There has to be green finance to support those. And a realization that green finance, when you've got large variability, so for example, think about beef production, we've got large variability in terms of carbon emissions. If I was looking at finance, that's where I'd put my money because I can get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of reducing emissions. Whereas there's a narrative, actually don't go near it because it's high carbon. But actually you're going to significantly reduce the carbon emissions by looking at that bigger variation.
Right. Great. Another question here. Come on up.
Give me a microphone, I start to sing. I'm with the dairy sector. Donald Moore, Michael, nice to see you again. Look, there's been a lot of talk on this panel about data. And I think that we are actually at a point where we are slowing down progress with our fixation on data. I would love to hear a little more from Michael and some of the other members on this panel. We are in a world at the moment where countries are basing their NDCs on data from the FAO that is 10 years out of date. Yeah. The GLEAM model, the Global Livestock Environmental Assessment model, is still running with 2015 data in it. And while I love the fact that FAO's funding you to do work in biocircular economies, they've got to get back to the basics. They've got to get back to working on what they are really there for, which is that basic underpinning models and data that we need to make decisions on. But in the meantime, while they are not doing that, we're actually slowing down progress in some of these environments. We've got to the point where perfect has become the enemy of the good, and people are waiting for the perfect data set to do something. What can we do about it, Michael? We need to start moving rather than this total fixation on the perfect data set.
Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of our models are old and inefficient. You heard me make the comment about tier one data and the real challenges with that. Of course, yes, and we're doing a lot of work, as you know, on farm level data capture. We've got to get that data flow through. And the thing that infuriates me most, and I'm going to throw it back to the farmers as an academic, is this view that that data on the farm is valuable. Yeah. It's only valuable when it gets interpreted and used. And therefore we've got to have that flow through of that primary data source. I get frustrated as much as Don when I look at some of the UK data sets based on a poor Nemecheck, and then I talk to the farmers and say, you've got the solution. We know our emissions are lower than this. We know the interventions you're doing. We've got to get that data set through into those correct models. Government has a critical role to play to be able to do that. So I totally agree with you. And of course then it will focus the mind on where those improvements are. Genetics, nutrition, soil health, basal feed systems, and how we can continue that improvement. Totally agree.
I'd just like to add to that yes. That the other component is if we lean into the voluntary carbon market a little bit, okay? There's a great example is the VM41 methodology that was created that allows for an emission reduction claim around feed additives. The methodologies actually are not created to require that absolute certainty in the data. It takes into account the fact that there is some uncertainty, and they're designed to allow farms to engage, get rewarded for engaging, and most importantly, adopt new technology that makes a difference from an environmental perspective. So I think part of one of the things that we can do to activate is to help farms understand that there are opportunities to engage in the voluntary market. There are methodologies out there that do not require that absolute precision, but it does require verifiable, accurate data, but they calculate in the fact that we deal with livestock that today, in a ruminant, she might be consuming 25 kilos of feed, and tomorrow she might consume 24.7, and 3 days later it might be 25.3. So there's variability. So they discount that, but it still makes a difference. It gets farms engaged. It rewards them for trying these new technologies, and is a positive enforcer.
We're coming up on time here. I'd love to wrap with each panelist briefly, like a 30-second. What are the big opportunities you see going forward? What are the things that are going to make the biggest jumps, the greatest enhancements to sustainability, to the future of animal agriculture? What are the opportunities that you want to pursue and that you want the world to pursue? Let's start with Roberto, and we'll come down this way.
Well, we believe in science, technology. We believe in data, artificial intelligence. We believe we have the tools now to make a huge improvement, not just in sustainability, but also in the economics of the animal production. And we need to put together the best minds to make this move forward. And even believe in GMOs, genetic addition. We need to do our work in all the production chain, and we will make a huge difference.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I think that collaboration is going to be key to affecting real change. We see that Alltech does this often. As much as we own our science and we conduct it, we collaborate with a lot of others because, the rising tide rises all boats. So this is how even the best science companies, the best communications organizations, and I think by us collaborating across the sector and not demonizing one part of our industry to advance another part, that all of these things are going to be the things that is going to really affect change.
Awesome.
I think critically, more science, less ideology, and there has to be respect, and I mean respect from both sides. Every single person at this COP wants a more sustainable future, wants a planet which is greater for our children and our children's children. But there's so many different views, and we need those sides to talk, because we need our governments to listen about what those challenges are, and what that realization is. I could talk a long time about the real excitement that are in there in terms of technologies and improvements in animal agriculture. But I think we need to bridge those gaps between the two sides to better understand it, and we do that through respect. And calling out as well where the scientific process has not been followed. And I think we need to call that out.
Great. Maddie.
I think when it comes to animal agriculture, one area we certainly have in the United States, and I think across the globe, would be in animal health. That definitely equates to sustainability and healthier pigs, healthier cattle, less disease, less antibiotic use, less death loss of animals is going to make us more sustainable. And so it's important that we really take that into account.
I'm going to go in a different direction and talk about human health. People want choices. They don't want to be told what to eat. They want nutrient-dense food that's good for them, good for their family, good for the planet. And they want to be able to know that the food that they're buying aligns with their values. And so the animal agriculture and animal protein checks all of those boxes. And the industry is committed to ensuring that we continue to do so, using the right pathways to limit our impact as much as we possibly can while continuing to provide food that people are demanding and valuing for their nutrient density.
And I'm going to wrap up with what I see as the opportunities going forward, drawing from a couple things. I think that a real shift to a bottom-up accounting approach that takes into the variability, takes into account the level of detail, what's happening in different places, but has us coming from a real data source. That's going to be key, so we have a clear picture of where we can target and focus going forward. And then the other thing is to bring the finance back into it. There's so many technologies, there's so many solutions that are out there that will drive down existing emissions and then also suck down more carbon into the soil, into the biomass of the ecosystems. And we need those place-specific blended capital financing stacks that are philanthropic, that are government, that are private investment, that can work uniquely in each place. And so there's a big bit of work that we're doing right now with WBCSD, OP2B, that's around these regenerative agricultural landscapes around the world where everyone can get together and do what's uniquely correct for the place and then track the outcomes in the data and reward that financially. So that's what I'm excited about. Thank you all for being here and sharing your insights. We'll hang around for a minute. Thanks to the audience and your good questions. See you soon.